Welcome to All at the Post. I'm not Russ Cohen. Russ, how are you today on the road?
I'm good. Yeah, just last minute event. So glad you could host and didn't want to miss the show.
Awesome. And we also have Mike Augello. Michael, how are you today?
Not on the road, and I'm wearing my Bronx Bombers T-shirt. So they won today over Cleveland. So there you go.
And Russ should be happy that the Mets have officially swept the Phillies.
Yes, I'm happy.
To give them so that's now a 4-game lead, I think, in the NL East. So
yes, and according to Michael Barkan, insurmountable. But there's a funny clip from John Kruk that kind of put it in perspective. It's very funny.
Yeah, insurmountable. I laugh at, but it's honestly how the Phillies are playing right now more than anything that I'm worried about. But let's get into some breaking news. The Flyers had just announced that they're letting go of assistant coaches Rocky Thompson, Darrell Williams, and skills coach Angelo Ricci. No word right now just yet on Brad Shaw, who is obviously potentially going to be in play interviewing sometime this week for the head coaching job, along with Kim Dillabaugh. Also, at the moment, there hasn't been any word on that. So, Russ, thoughts on that? Yeah,
I think Brad will be staying. I think he'll end up staying as an assistant. I think that's what the plan is, unless they don't find a coach, which I think they will. And then, everything else makes sense. The shooting percentage has been really down for the last couple of years. I mean, it picked up a little at the end of the year, but that's part of the skills coach. So I think they need a coach more interested in shooting than even skills. And then, as far as Rocky, that was obvious. Probably waited a year or two too late. And then with Kim Dillabaugh, that'll be interesting. I don't know which way it's going to go, but I would fire him, but it's not up to me.
Yeah, I mean, none of the releases here are surprising, certainly to me. Thompson has had a long leash here with the power play just being kind of stagnant. I mean, we can talk about personnel and form and everything else, but at the end of the day, this is a power play that's hovered near the bottom of the league for the majority of his tenure. So, he had plenty of time with that. And again, these were Tortorella assistant coaches that, again, none of this is necessarily a surprise. They're going to want to have some fresh voices, depending on whoever the head coach might be. Mike, what were your thoughts on it?
Well, I don't know much other than on, Rocky Thompson discussing with Russ. It was somebody who I thought, well, maybe they would bring him in back as an American Hockey League coach, because Ian LaPerriere hasn't exactly done a great job at the American Hockey League level, and Thompson had some success at the AHL level, but it just seems to me like a clean sweep. And now I'm wondering, a clean sweep for who? Because we know the news that came out of Vancouver regarding Rick Tocchet, and it sounds to me like they're basically saying, or Tocchet is basically saying, I'm not interested in extending here. So if that's the case, then he sees one of 6 or 7 jobs that are out there, because I think Andrew Burnett's going to end up getting fired in Nashville. It hasn't happened yet, but, you've got New York, you've got Boston, you've got Chicago, you've got Philadelphia. There's a lot of jobs and a lot
Seattle
of
as well.
Yeah, so there's a lot of jobs out there, and he will have his pick of them because he's probably one of the better coaches out there on the market.
So, again, other big news, of course, as we stay in the Metropolitan Division, we have seen the end of the Lou Lamoriello tenure on Long Island. Again, it's one of those circumstances that we've discussed it plenty, guys, right, about how stagnant things have gotten on Long Island, with Lou's tenure. And again, it was time. If it was anybody probably other than Lou Lamoriello, it would have been at least a couple years ago that I think that they would have potentially made a change. But Russ, your thoughts obviously on the ending of the Lamoriello tenure.
Yeah, you're right. If it wasn't Lou Lamoriello with the track record he's had and the long history, career and all that, he would have been gone already for sure. I was hearing early in the season that this could happen, and then we brought it up for sure. And so it's not a surprise. What'll be interesting is what they'll do next, because Patrick Waugh still has a job. They're going to let the new GM figure that one out. And I am working on an article for sportsalgae.com for like 4 potential candidates, guys like Michael Fuda, guys that are out there that could be really good choices for the Islanders. So the only thing that's kind of odd for me is that John Collins is going to do the search. Now, I understand, he's got a position with the Islanders. It's just that he's more known for like business and the Winter Classic. And so it's like that struck me weird, but it's the Islanders. So.
I do have a theory with regards to that. I do wonder how much synergy, if this was, your classic corporate attempt at synergy to try to maybe if Collins is more known for the business side of things, that the next general manager would have maybe a better way of kind of linking up those two areas,
maybe
potentially from a communication standpoint, because Lou, at the end of the day, we know how Lou operated. Lou basically operated the thing like Conclave. So
yeah,
this is how the man operated. It was just leave me alone, let me do what I do, and I've got the resume to do it. Although that resume, much like John Tortorella's, is operating almost 20 plus years in the past versus where the game is now.
Well, I'll say this, and I have the immense respect for Lou Lamoriello and his record, and winning Stanley Cups and the longevity of his career. But where he was with the Islanders is basically where he was at the end with New Jersey, where I think some of his approaches to the game sort of lost its connection. And in Toronto, remember, he was inserted as a buffer between a psychotic in Mike Babcock and Brendan Shanahan. And he had Mark Hunter and Kyle Dubas as understudies learning the ropes. So, the full Lou effect wasn't in place in Toronto. Then he goes to the Islanders, and he's the point man. He has complete control. And I think at the very beginning it was fine, but as things went along, how many times? Give me $1 for every time I opened my big mouth and said they don't score enough, or I whipped out the "it's over" sign, because they never friggin' changed. They never did. And I'm sorry. I understand being set in your ways and believing what you believed in, but at a certain point with the Islanders, they needed to think outside the box. And basically, I don't think Lou was ever going to think outside the box. And they've reached a point now with signing guys like Pierre Engvall to 7-year contracts where they needed to make a change. I have a lot of respect for Lou, but it was time for him to go.
So kind of transitioning now to, let's get into last night's action, and we'll get it first. The game of the evening, at least in my mind, the Leafs and the Senators. The true, much more reflective of the Battle of Ontario last night, Mike. The Leafs get out to a quick 2-0 lead and then begin to have you break out the Pepto-Bismol and then pull off the win to get up 2-0 in the series. And now we travel to the Canadian capital to see if the Senators can get off the mat down 0-2.
I'm
wearing analysis of last night's game.
Yeah, I'm wearing a collared shirt, and I was starting to get all choked up. Well, okay, game one was sort of a one-off because Ottawa played possibly the stupidest approach to a playoff game I've ever seen in my 50 years of watching playoff hockey. They came out, they were, Travis Green said, we want to be aggressive. Okay, well, you gave Toronto and their power play 6 power play opportunities. You were completely out of control and did everything, cross-checked John Tavares in the back 7 times, just so the referee didn't miss the first 6. Let's give him a 7. It was just an asinine approach. Now, they were much more restrained in game 2. There weren't as many power plays. Toronto jumps out to that 2-0 lead and then sort of sits back. And you cannot sit back in these plays. I understand the concept. I understand the feel of, okay, let's just not make a mistake and let the other team come to us. And if we do everything right, it doesn't work that way. You're just look what Washington did in game 1 against Montreal. They sat back for 50 minutes. Montreal gets a power play. They make it 2-1, and Suzuki ties up the game late in regulation. That's basically what happened with Toronto, where Ottawa, finally got on the board, tied the game with, I think it was 5 or 6 minutes left to go in the third period. And I think even though Toronto, I think they outshot them like 7 or 8-1. I think Ottawa had one shot on goal, and it was the shot that beat Stolarz. But in the overtime, and if you watch that play, I mean, Max Domi didn't have 10 goals this year, so he's the most, other than like a defenseman like Simone Benoit, he's probably the least, the person you would least expect to score a goal like that. But
yet it's the playoffs. It's those kind of moments.
And yeah, and last year, Anthony, he played great he was one of the better performers for the Leafs against Boston. Benoit picks the puck up, goes into the zone, and drop passes it. And if you watch the replay, Domi burns both Dylan Cousins, who he left with hanging his jock out on the face-off circle, and Drake Batherson held onto the puck and picked the top corner. It was a great individual play by Domi, but it was a complete defensive breakdown by the Ottawa Senators. And I'm not saying, I remember I picked the Senators in 7, so I still think this series is up in the air. But if Toronto keeps playing the way that they're playing,
hold on. How is this series up in the air, Mike? Seriously, come on.
Excuse me. What I'm saying is that what's the old expression, Russ? The series isn't over until you've lost on home ice, and they haven't lost on home ice. All right, Toronto has won 2 games. They dominated in game 1. In game 2, it was up in the air, and Domi scores the goal. Game 3, if Ottawa shows up, if Ottawa plays better defensively, if they get a performance like Ullmark had in game 2, they could very easily win game 3 and be right back in the series. Toronto has been the better of the 2 teams, and if Stolarz keeps playing the way he is, they'll probably win the series, but I don't put anything past the Leafs.
I will put this about Stolarz. I know the big concern was his rebound control in game 1. I thought he would clean that up pretty well in game 2. So again, the Leafs, they have to build their confidence off their goaltender. And right now, I think their goaltender is playing very confidently. And yeah, I agree, Mike. When you get to Ottawa, that's sort of that becomes the next level, the prove it level. But I do think the Leafs are in command. I think they have command of this series. I do.
And Russ, I'll say this, and not my shoulders is sore right now, so I can't pat myself on the back. But the Maple Leafs playing the way that they are right now. Gee, who was the guy who said they needed a couple right shot defensemen in their top 4 to be a better, more complete defensive team? Oh, let's see, Brandon Carlo and Chris Tanev. How do they look now, Russ?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Steve Dangle was right. I remember hearing him say that. But
Steve Dangle, who we're going to have on the show eventually.
I would just like to know, though, how does Anthony Stolarz get away with the 4 hacks on Ridley Gray? Like, that's crazy that the refs didn't call
because
a
of
penalty.
the stuff that happened in game 1.
Yes,
because of the near knee injury in game 1. The referees are just going, okay, it's playoff code. Stoley, have at him. I mean, he was hacking at him like he was a redwood tree.
And every Maple Leaf fan will love him forever. I'm telling you right now, I talked to a longtime Leaf fan, and he said to me, he says, if the Leafs win game 3, I sign up for putting Ryan Reeves in the lineup in game 4 and say, go at 71. I don't care if you get suspended for 10 games. Take that MFer out.
You do not change. You got your chance at a sweep. Putting Ryan Reeves in the lineup is not the call.
That's the emotional thing. That's the emotional thing.
I hear it.
I would ask this question to Mike, though. Mike, we all know that teams have these weird shrinky-dink things that they put on the wall, and so are the Leafs putting like branches on a maple tree? What are they doing after each win?
I don't. This is not like Major League where they're peeling off a section bus. So I don't know. I'm not inside the locker room.
I know they have on the wall.
I know they have the WWE belt, and they And they had James Hetfield from Metallica at the game last night, and Edge, although he can't call himself Edge.
You know Adam Copeland's going to be there.
Yeah,
of course.
He can't call himself Edge anymore because the WWE owns the name, so he's Adam Copeland.
I think Trish Stratus was there too, I think.
Oh, I wish I was there then.
Yeah. So let's discuss some of the other games on the slate last night. We, of course, saw the shocking dismantling of the Tampa Bay Lightning on their home ice last night. I mean, Florida's Florida, and I did pick them in the series to win in 7, but I didn't expect – it was a rough performance from Vasilevsky last night.
Oh, my God. 6 goals on 16 shots, Russ. And what I think is a bigger key to this series is the fact that Florida, and we knew Florida was going to do this because this is what Florida does. I'm not saying they do it on purpose. They play rough style hockey. They throw you into the boards. Carter Verhaeghe takes out Cernak. Cernak came back, but he wasn't as effective. And this is a few years ago when Michael Bunting took him out in the series against the Leafs. When Cernak never came back, he's a big part of their defense. And they lost Sorelli in the first period. If they lose those, that's 2 pillars. If they lose those pillars, they're in trouble.
Yeah, I thought I was watching John Graham in that. It didn't look like Vasilevsky. That's the worst I've seen him look in a couple of years. But I also think Tampa was because of what you said, defensively, they were just that's it. They don't have any extra depth. If their guys are in there and Sorelli's a great defensive forward, then they're fine. If not, their team defense went to hell.
Yeah, and it did. It kind of fell apart. But, I mean, again, at the end of the day, it was to me, Vasilevsky's performance, I think, took away a lot of Tampa Bay's confidence. We talk about this all the time about a team, how much a team generates, what they're able to do when you have a goaltender playing. When you have somebody as good as Andrei Vasilevsky get absolutely lit up like a Christmas tree, that's going to shake any hockey team.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to factor in here, maybe there's the curse of Zemgus Girgensons because he was in Buffalo for 10 years and didn't make the playoffs, and now he goes to Tampa Bay, and then the Lightning look like the Buffalo Sabres in Game 1 against the Florida Panthers.
That may be far-fetched, but okay.
But again, nonetheless, impressive performance from the Florida Panthers in that game. And, at this point now, you have to, if you're the Tampa Bay Lightning, you're going to have to really you have to buckle down because you're severely on the back foot going into Game 2.
Well, let me just say this because I know you two gentlemen and Kevin Allen were scolding me on the Sunday Spectacular for saying that the worst of the 8 series was Carolina and the New Jersey Devils. And I think the NHL agrees with that because they started that game at 6 o'clock yesterday when nobody was watching. And I don't think anybody
knew.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just public perception. And there's just the series. I think both teams have talented players that can make for an entertaining series, but it's, again, and I hate to say this for the Hurricanes, but at the end of the day, they are not a sexy hockey team at the end of the day. I mean, there's some talent there, and I mean, I'm a big, as you guys know, I'm a big proponent of Logan Stankoven, and I thought that was a great get for Carolina. But that being said, it's not a team that has that sort of thing that draws you in. And I think that's a big part.
The one thing I agree, Ant. The only thing I could say is they played a better game. They were better without Luke Hughes because I think at times Luke Hughes could be too creative and have those turnovers.
Yeah.
If they get Dylan back, they can button it up defensively a little bit more, but they got to get scoring from somewhere. He can't do it alone, and Meyer needs to kind of wake up. But I think they're still in this series, but they're probably going to lose it.
It's a tough one for me. I just feel like it's Carolina, and I know you picked the Devils, Russ. To me, Carolina, I just feel like they have just a little something more than the Devils do, and it's one of those things where I expect somebody from the Hurricanes to come through, but amongst their forward core. And in Game 1, obviously, it was Stankoven, and things obviously moved along here in Game 2, which was more of a team, a stronger team-based game, I think, in this one.
But this is Stankoven, who Anthony specifically told me he wanted the Flyers to draft.
Absolutely.
And I remember we discussed Stankoven and how good he was, and now you can see it.
Yeah.
I have a suggestion for Eric Tulsky, the GM of the Carolina Hurricanes. In the summer, would you please trade Kochetkov? Because he's the guy who played almost 50 games for you, and you go into the playoffs and you play Freddie Anderson. It's like, okay, he's the more experienced of the two goaltenders. That experience has not paid off for him for most of his career because his experience has been losing. They'll probably win in this series because we know that the Devils are severely debilitated because Jack Hughes is not there. But I don't think you're ever going to win with Freddie Anderson as your goaltender. And again, it's sort of like the Wall Stolars thing in Toronto. You need to find out what Kochetkov is. And if you keep going to Antti Ranta or Freddie Anderson instead of Kochetkov, you know what? Trade the kid because he's never going to get a fair shake from you.
I agree. Brind'Amour just is stuck in his ways with that. It reminds me when Hulk Hogan tag teamed with the Randy Macho Man Savage, and Savage would never tag in Hogan. It's the same thing. Like once Freddie's in, that's it. You'll never see Kochetkov again.
And certainly in another, I'm going to say surprising, but maybe not surprising in this case, Minnesota really kind of handling Vegas in Vegas for Game 2, and we know we know Minnesota has talent, and I really think actually the series, I wasn't enamored with Vegas's Game 1 victory, and the way they kind of took it a little bit on the chin here in Game 2 is starting. I mean, the pick is still, the pick is what it is. My sweep pick's out the window, so be it. But now I'm almost a little bit concerned. I'm a little concerned here for Vegas because they didn't exactly look great on home ice, and now you're heading to Minnesota. And they're going to be fired. The Wild are going to be fired up for this for Game 3 and Game 4, Russ.
Yeah, it's interesting. I felt like Adin Hill looked like the Adin Hill before he won a cup, and I also felt like there was some bad juju before that game. When they, how everybody does the horn, the siren, they had two podcasters doing it. And I was thinking, I'm sure Wayne Newton's not doing anything. I'm sure. Steven Tyler was around. There's always somebody in Vegas. I was shocked that they did that. I'm not saying that affected the game, but I was just shocked at that. And then I was shocked at Vegas and I don't know, looking slow. Like that was the first time they looked slow.
They struggled to contain Kaprizov, who finished off.
They did. They couldn't do it at all.
Well, whichever one of Siegfried or Roy is still alive, they can hit. And I know Russ made a big thing about Boldy. I mean, Boldy's a great player. So
he really is.
I mean, I didn't think it was going to be a sweep. I still think Vegas has the advantage in the series. I did look at the stat line, and I saw that they have Zeev Buium playing with Zach Bogosian, and they played them about 11 minutes, and they were -2. I mean, I love Zeev Buium. The playoffs, putting him in right in the playoffs against Vegas, that might be a little.
It's deep end of the pool. You're in the deep end of the pool here. It's going to be.
It is. They didn't have much of a choice. Deep end.
They didn't have much of a choice, but still, I think it's a little much. But he'll learn.
Yeah, he absolutely. In this, so again, we have coming up this evening. We've got Game 2, obviously between the Capitals and Canadiens. Game 3 coming up, obviously between Dallas and Colorado, Edmonton and LA.
Okay, let me touch on a couple things because I was doing a podcast for the Hockey News, and I watched every minute of Washington Montreal. I have a bone to pick with I think it was ESPN that did the broadcast, where they go and they say Alex Ovechkin has never scored a playoff overtime goal in his entire career. And lo and behold, he scored. Russ, it's like Ozzie Smith has not hit a home run against a right-handed pitcher in 1,900 and something again. And then against Tom Niedenfuhr in Game 5 of the NLCS, he cranks it down the right field line, and Jack Buck says, "Go crazy, folks, go crazy!" I mean, my God, it's like.
Yeah, you're saying they black catted him. I mean, maybe. Yes. I would say this. I did just write something for the Hockey News about this series. I think they have to do better containing Ovechkin. I mean, I know it was a power play, but you can't let him roam free like that. I think they have to kind of like. I was looking, believe it or not, this is how desperate I was. I was looking at the NHL edge stats, and honestly, Ovechkin did not skate that much in the game, and they need to keep him on the edges and having him skate a lot more because you could see that stamina would still be an issue for him. I think that's a big key, and I think St. Louis is doing the right thing, keeping Jack-Eye out of the lineup because he's right. Tom Wilson's still going to do what Tom Wilson does, and that's not going to stop Jack-Eye from from turning the puck over. So I don't think he's putting him in ever.
No, but the problem here, Anthony, is the fact that you've got an experienced Washington team, and they're mugging Lane Hudson. They had Hudson in a headlock, and Caden Gooley takes a retaliatory penalty against Ryan Leonard that ends up being the power play goal. And they're just Brendan, believe me, everybody wants to send a basket of flowers to Alexander Alexiev for cross-checking Brendan Gallagher across the face, because everybody would love to do that. But there wasn't even a call there. There wasn't even a call. And it's like, and as much as I hate Brendan Gallagher, that deserved a penalty. There wasn't even a fine.
Nobody's in more playoff mode than NHL referees right now.
Holy moly.
It's true.
So you got that series. And I love the spin. I absolutely love the spin in the Edmonton-LA series where they say, well, the fact that the Oilers came back from 5-2 in the third period has to be optimism for the Edmonton Oilers. No, it's the fact that Connor McDavid went balls out and scored a goal and 3 assists, and then Philip Deneau scores with 18 seconds left to go in the game or whatever the hell it was. I mean, I'm sorry. I think that's a gut punch. I think Edmonton is in deep, deep trouble. I saw somebody in the chat that said Klingberg and Evander Kane are coming back in the lineup. Okay, everybody, everything's fine now.
I would say this. I would just say that Stuart Skinner, he's proven to be a very mediocre goalie in this league, and I think that's a problem because Edmonton's defense isn't great. I do think Edmonton did turn it on, and I do think the Kings' defense showed their warts a little bit, but it doesn't matter. Edmonton's not winning this series because they can't stop the puck, period.
Again, game 2 is going to be, I mean, we talk about, as Mike said, the series doesn't happen until someone loses on home ice, but I do feel like if LA is able to get out to a 2, if they can get that second win tonight, that's going to really make things really tough, I think, for the Oilers. Because, again, if they get ahead and they can play it, and the biggest thing with LA is the game kind of got out of hand on in game 1. If they can get back to a more disciplined, lockdown obviously third period in this case, but transpose that to the entire game, I think LA should be in command of this series, and certainly. The interesting part of the subtext, as Russ and I both know, is the subtext is, of course, a certain former Flyer, short-time Flyer, who played particularly well in Game 1, Andrei Kuzmenko. How that turned out to be a pretty good move for LA, but it also could turn out to be it might actually turn the Flyers. Not only did the Flyers get a 3rd-round pick, but it could potentially improve the Flyers draft pick that they got previously from the Oilers if they're taken out in this series.
Well, here's the warning. Here's the warning sign, Russ, of impending doom when it comes to the Edmonton Oilers. You look at the stat line and who played almost 25 minutes in that game? Brett Kulak. When Brett Kulak is playing 25 minutes, you're toast.
Yeah, I would say that. I would also say that, and that is bad. As far as Kuzmenko, and look, the Kings have a much better power play, and they could really shelter him and use him as a power play specialist. That wasn't going to work out for Philly, not even next year. So, I don't fault him at all.
No, it's not a case of faulting. It's a case where I think both teams got what they were looking for in this circumstance. Philly got an additional asset. And there might be a byproduct here of if LA takes Edmonton out, that improves that potential middle pick for the Flyers when we get to June.
Yeah, just to touch on the other series. I mean, Winnipeg. It hasn't been domination because St. Louis played well in game one and they got that late goal. But I think going back to obviously St. Louis needs to win game three or it's going to be a very quick series. I think Hellebuck after the hiccup in game one, I think he played a lot better in game two. So they're on a positive path. The Dallas Colorado thing. I mean, Jared Bednar, would you please stop playing games with the Landeskog thing? I mean, it's the biggest tease in the world. Okay, he's taking the pregame skate, and then you don't play him. Now, game three, they say, well, we'll see. Of course he's going to play. He's going to play because it's home. It's an emotional advantage, and they can control his minutes because they had the last change. Exactly. I mean, if you would have just said from the very beginning, we're probably not going to play him until game three, but
you're also up already 1-0. I think if you're down 0-1, there's a possibility they might have him in that game. I think when you're up,
I think so.
You got a little bit of wiggle room to make that decision. Say, hey, Gabriel, how are you feeling? And even if he says he's good to go, but they're looking out on the ice and going, he's just about there. But do we need to risk him in this game when we're already up? When we've already gotten what we needed to by getting a road win in game one?
Yeah, this is what the Capitals are doing with protests too. Same thing. Like he's out there, he's skating. The cut must not be that bad, but why put him in if you're winning? Or if you're at least the series isn't in trouble. I think Mike just is like this is like Mike's version of the Bad News Bears, where he's like, let him play. Remember that?
Yeah. In breaking training, yes, I remember. William Devane, thank you.
Yes.
But I mean, I expected this series to go long. I didn't expect the Avalanche to win as one-sided as they did in game one. Yeah. Dallas gets the overtime goal from Colin Blackwell. I think it's going to go 7 games. I mean, now Heiskanen is skating. I think this is a big tease. I don't think he's anywhere close to being ready. Russ, maybe he plays in game 7 because, would you rather have him or Liam Bichel in as your sixth defenseman? That's where they are right now.
Game 5 potentially, if they're down 3-1, I could see.
Yeah, if they're down like that, you're right, Ant. I think that's when he would come in.
But that's the more the likely timeline is games 5, 6, or 7. I think you would.
Yeah. I mean, who's expecting Colin Blackwell to score? Like that was crazy.
But again, classic. It's the guy you don't see coming. It's the John Druce effect.
Mike Rupp. I remember saying, who the hell is Mike Rupp when he scored the cup winner for the Devils? I had no idea who he was.
Exactly.
Now he's just that guy in NHL Network.
Yeah.
All right. Everybody, hope you enjoyed tonight's games. That's it for Alt the Post. Have a good one.
Goodbye, everybody.